So, hi everyone. We are going to be talking about a new series of videos that Miriam and I are going to be doing. And they're called Neat, Plausible and Wrong. So, do you want to introduce roughly, what we're doing? What is it that we're doing with these videos?
So I think one of the things that we are quite keen to do is looking quite critically at some of the leadership theories and models and some of the concepts that have been used since time immemorial about how leadership goes, who is a suitable leader, and the psychology behind these theories. But we also would like to show how this might have worked very well for some time, but perhaps not as well anymore because they fall short of today's requirements, today's workforce, and today's leaders, taking into account especially neurodivergence.
Thank you.
We will, we'll highlight the ways that they can still be useful, but perhaps be adapted.
Absolutely. And I think for me, it was quite shocking when I first encountered when I encountered being trained in business psychology as part of my work, having studied actual psychology and realizing how out of date it was and how often taken out of context it was. And I think there's a lot of value in re-examining some of these things that we think are core to the way that people work at work, that we've definitely changed our opinion on as far as psychology is concerned.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I guess what I hear from what you are saying there is about evolution of leadership rather than maybe a revolution.
Absolutely. And yeah, it really is it's not saying it's all wrong and we have to throw it out and start again completely, but it's about understanding when things are useful as a lens to look at things through and when they're not.
Yeah, so bringing in real world insights as they are now.
Absolutely. So who is it that we really want to reach? Who do we think is going to be interested in this?
I think it's not just the leaders, but perhaps leaders are quite important to hear about this because they employ the leadership theories and concepts. They almost enforce them. It's also about people who are like ourselves, those that are being led, people in organizations, the workers.
Yeah, I think for me, it's people who are interested in how our minds work, and particularly in that work context, how we think at work, how people are at work, and also who are interested in the up-to-date, the modern take on this, the current take on this, rather than who are happy to accept the received wisdom that we kind of think of as business psychology. So people who are interested in new research and those kinds of things.
Yeah. And I think you hit a good point there, where it's not just about the leaders and the led, it's also about anybody who would like to know, so what's new, what's changed, in what way things have changed.
Absolutely. And I think that comes back to why neurodiversity is such an important part of this, because it provides a challenge to a lot of the conventional ways, a lot of conventional psychological theories, particularly those that predate when we really started using it as a concept. And a lot of those are baked into how we think about how we think at work.
Yeah.
So what are the kind of things that we're planning to talk about? Or what is it that you'd like to, the kind of themes that you'd like to explore in this?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of very good theories that have been there since the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And maybe the kind of personality types theories around MBTI, DISC, Strengths Finder, emotional intelligence, the 9 to 5 dilemma, rewards and incentives, leadership types, as in servant leadership, X and Y types of leaders, risk management, lean leadership, those sort of things. And as you said earlier, they have a lot of good things about them, but there are other things that could be done differently in order to make them more effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it's these areas, of how we, how we think about leadership, how we think about decision making. I think that's a really important area. But maybe how we think about change and conflict and interpersonal conflict, and how and that really crosses over with a lot of the ones you've mentioned. There's stuff around.
That's a very good one, actually, Matthew, especially when you look at how much people try to avoid conflict as if it were a total taboo and totally bad thing.
Absolutely. And one of the things I'm really interested in getting into is the idea of change resistance, because it's something that I've always been fascinated by, kind of on both sides of making change in organizations and sometimes not agreeing with changes that were made. So there's also stuff around communication and how we share information, how we what the best way to convey information is. For me, there's something really useful around when we think about productivity and efficiency and particularly this idea of best practice. I often find the idea of best practice to be problematic because it doesn't take into account context, and context usually matters hugely in this stuff. Then there's
and with best practice, you just jogged my memory there. What people usually look out for are the external kind of things that can be seen. But is that really what best practice is about? Is that everything that it is about?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the last one I'm really interested to explore is really around emotions and motivation. We often kind of set aside emotions at work, and even where we are kind of thinking about this. And really what kicked off this idea for us was a conversation about Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Indeed, yes. Yeah. And that's one very interesting one, because while the way it's talked about, it is a great concept, but it assumes people's needs are very linear and perhaps fixed. And how does that work in this world with neurodivergent individuals?
Absolutely. And I think there's a lot to dig into that. I don't want to rabbit hole. I mean, otherwise we'll record a whole episode in the intro video. So but no, I think hopefully that gives people an idea of the areas that we want to cover. So what is it that you really want out of people? What do you want for people if they listen to this, watch this, watch our videos?
I think what I would hope for is how HR or anyone responsible for shaping the workplace culture, whether it's the leader or other people, how they can afford to change things so that people can thrive, so that people can become more productive, so that the workplace doesn't feel like a place that people go to sighing and feeling heavy because things are done in ways that perhaps are not being revisited, ways that are demanding and not satisfying in most ways, ways that only give you the paycheck but not the joy. Inclusion, flexibility, those sort of things are very important, so as people can feel that they are not. I know that this sounds like a cliche, and I personally don't really like cliches, when people have got to bring their whole selves to work.
Yeah. And I think I'd personally, I'd really like to explore the idea of authenticity at work, because it's an interesting one itself, isn't it? But there's yeah, completely. I think for me, it's being able to feel confident about, because so much psychology underpins all the things that you've described, and it's often implicit. You're kind of using a tool without understanding exactly where it comes from or why it's useful, when it's useful, and then you can't really understand when to apply it and how to apply it necessarily. So I'd really like people to feel confident approaching the workplace using these kinds of things, and confident in knowing that when they use a thing, they're using a good thing, that's something that's going to have a positive effect, and a useful lens to see whatever the thing that they're looking at through, rather than just applying a model that ends up really being very normative and kind of causing being a bit of a kind of narrow view on how people actually are.
Yeah. And I guess what you're also saying there is a view that's fixed, a view that doesn't move with the needs and the kind of people that are using that view.
Absolutely. And so just kind of coming towards the end of this conversation, but why is it that people should listen to you in particular about this topic?
Why me in particular? So, as a consultant psychologist, and as somebody that looks like me on the outside and being neurodivergent, I think I have worked the intersection of leadership and human complexity since I became aware of who I am as a person. And inclusivity has been something very important for me. So not only have I got the experiential knowledge of being neurodivergent, being different in so many different ways, I also have studied quite extensively leadership theories, being different, inclusion, equity, and how leaders can embrace inclusion and inclusivity, understanding neurodivergence, and leading in a way that is helpful, perhaps also leading in a way that takes into account difference. And I am also hoping that being someone who is able most times to say what I think is something that I would like to encourage others to be able to do, so as we can have as many views from different people as possible.
Yeah.
Not only have I worked with leaders and with individuals that are different, I've also been an advocate, a very strong advocate for people that are different, for people that are marginalized, for people that are treated differently, and perhaps people who feel like shriveling into corners, into spaces where they may therefore not be seen and where they may not be able to have their voice heard. And I would like to be able to draw people out of such spaces.
Absolutely. And that really crosses over with my interest in this, which is around the neurodiversity and innovation work, and how important it is that those things happen for an organization that wants to carry on working, and for an individual who wants to get the best out of themselves as well, and particularly if they don't fit into the standard categories and the standard ways we have of thinking about people. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's really exciting to be able to explore this with you, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing where we go with everything.
Same here.
Super. Well, I hope you and the audience have that's sparked your interest. If it has, please let us know the kind of any topics that you'd like us to take on. That would be brilliant. Or any questions that you've got, and we can answer them in a subsequent episode. Otherwise, please do keep an eye out for more episodes of this coming soon. Thank you.